every year we've been set aside by plagues and all sorts of things that are appropriate for the season, including COVID. I want to thank the Inn of Court, our Temple Inn of Court, and the Drexel Inn of Court, shorthand for all the fancy names that you see in the program, for getting together to put this on. I also want to thank Barbara Edelstein for being here. This is an Ed Edelstein event. If you remember, for those of you who do remember Ed, he endowed us with the idea of doing something that was not expected and fun. So we thought this was an appropriate program for him tonight, and we honor his memory by doing this program. A couple of people that we need to thank. Chris Malios, Judge Malios, are you here? Do you have anything you need to say? Any announcement that you need to make?
No, other than this is our April meeting. We're not having one on the second Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
And we are soliciting nominations for the Lowell Reed Award as well.
Got it. I want to especially thank Tom Kline and his son Zach, who not only have been a pleasure to work with, but are such talented people and have been so generous in giving of their time. Of course, I made them feel very guilty about not doing it for the last 3 years, but they seem to be very generous about it. I do have to thank Mary McGovern, the dear students here, who is just invaluable. Yvette Cooper and the other members of the Inn and the team that I worked with who did all the heavy lifting. All I did was get the program together. And I do want to thank the Drexel Inn. If you like the wine, they're responsible for it. So thank you very much.
I do have one short announcement.
Fine. I will see to you, President.
Just one short announcement. Our annual day of service. Stephanie Costa just reminded me that it's going to be Friday, May 26th of this year. It is at the Ethel Allen Promise Academy, and it is from 9 a.m. And so this is a great opportunity to talk to high school students about the law, about careers in the law, about the importance of education, about what we do. So we're looking for folks that want to join, take a morning off from your practice, take a morning off from billable hours, take a morning off from dispensing justice, or just push it back a little bit, and just hopefully spend some time that's going to change a young person's life. So thank you very much. Should folks email?
Yeah, they can email me. Obviously, a big thanks to Judge Strickland, really was the person who organized a lot of this, but if you want to know what to do, both of us were there last year, and email either one of us, and we'll get you on the list. It's very fulfilling. We make sure that it's not repetitive, so we'll talk to you about what your practice is and make sure that, you'll appear to do something that somebody else who's volunteering is asking.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
And let's give a round of applause to the musicians and the stage. Thank you. With that,
How does it feel? That is our question for you tonight. Well, not exactly how does it feel, as Bob Dylan first asked in Like a Rolling Stone in 1965, but more pertinently, how does he feel? He being the very same Bob Dylan about subjects everyone in this ceremonial courtroom cares about deeply: judges, law, justice, and the American legal system. Good evening. I'm Tom Kline.
I'm Zach Kline, and tonight with our band, Jake Miller on guitar and Juan Yanez on violin, we're going to tell you how Bob Dylan, or at least how we, two longtime Bob Dylan fans, interpret how he feels about the law. We will look at lyrics Dylan wrote in
The early 1960s, the mid-1960s, the late 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, and even today. Now, some of you might say, Tom and Zach, for the more casual Dylan fan, there is no way you or anyone could condense Bob Dylan's career in under 100 words. Not even Wikipedia could do that.
Well, starting in 2002, right before Dylan would take the stage as tour manager,
Al, his tour manager is Al, just so you know we're devoted fans.
would read the following introduction taken from an August 2002 article by journalist Jeff Myers in the Buffalo Daily News, written in advance of a concert in the area.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the poet laureate of rock and roll, the voice of the promise of the 60s counterculture, the guy who forced folk into bed with rock, who donned makeup in the 70s and disappeared into a haze of substance abuse, who emerged to find Jesus, who was written off as a has-been by the end of the 80s and who suddenly shifted gears and released some of the strongest music of his career beginning in the late 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Columbia recording artist, Bob Dylan. A show of hands. Who has seen Bob Dylan in concert? And who has heard this introduction?
And, just for the record, we are not here, per se, to talk about Dylan going electric at the Newport Folk Festival,
Or the Rolling Thunder Review?
the never-ending tour that has Dylan on the road for thousands of live shows since 1989,
His now storied career as a painter?
Dylan's Nobel Prize in Literature, or why he won't play any of your old favorites in concert, and if he does, why he just can't play them in a way that you can recognize.
And we're not here to talk about lawsuits that Bob Dylan himself has been a litigant in. Or the time he was arrested for suspiciously walking around alone before a concert in Lakewood, New Jersey.
We're here to talk about Dylan and the law. But before we get to Dylan himself, we have to start with a question.
Do judges like Bob Dylan? In research conducted by Professor Alex B. Long of the University of Tennessee College of Law, of all the songwriters cited by judges in their opinions, Bob Dylan, far and above, ranks above all of the rest.
More than Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Dylan's hero and inspiration, Woody Guthrie, to be quoted in opinions over 100 times.
Got it? How does it feel to be on your own, like a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? That might be a tune that Chief Justice John Roberts was humming when he wrote his 2008 dissent in Sprint Communications. The case dealt with an issue of standing, with Roberts arguing that the plaintiff, a collection agency for a payphone company, lacked standing. Roberts wrote, "The absence of any right to the substantive recovery means that respondents cannot benefit from the judgment they seek and thus lack Article III standing. when you got nothing to lose.
Roberts quotes Dylan from like Rolling Stone, when you got nothing to lose. For anyone who's listened to like a Rolling Stone, that might sound a little funny. As a recorded lyric, the way Dylan and so many covers have performed the song for decades is,
when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose.
when asked about quoting Dylan in a 2016 interview with Dean John F. O'Brien of New England School of Law, Boston, Chief Justice Roberts said, "An intelligent person appreciates Bob Dylan's poetry, if not his music." It was, after all, a dissent, so you have a little bit more leeway there. He added, Bob Dylan captured the whole notion behind standing. In that case, the party didn't have anything at stake and had nothing to lose, and the case should have been thrown out on that basis.
I know Bob Dylan would have agreed with that. To the missing word, ain't, well, Roberts pointed out, that is as performed. The liner notes show that it doesn't have the ain't in it.
And when pressed as to why the published lyrics on BobDylan.com, not the widely sung ones, the chief went on,
I'm a bit of a textualist. Or, as Dean O'Brien suggested in retort, if not an originalist.
and hey, Dylan, we think, is more of a living constitutionalist. But for the chief, the lyric failed.
One other conservative Supreme Court justice quoting, one Supreme Court justice quoting Bob Dylan, not enough, we have another. In 2010, in a concurring opinion, Justice Anton Scalia scolded his colleagues for their unwillingness to rule on an expectation of privacy in a company email. Quote, by concocting case-specific standards or issuing opaque opinions is, in my opinion, indefensible. The times they are a-changing is a feeble excuse for disregard of duty.
We have a complicated irony, a voice associated so deeply with conservatism, quoting the lyric first thought as a diametric opposite. But Justice Scalia is not the only one to quote the times are changing, as we see a long list of citations.
We have a judge quoting Bob Dylan's Gotta Serve Somebody, a song we'll get back to later tonight. They're reminding litigants of their duty to serve process under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. And with a familiar Dylan too.
We have a judge admonishing a claimant for their, quote, Bob Dylan, it ain't me, Dave.
Then we have Ballad of the Thin Man, with a litigant who didn't plead with the particularity reminded of Bob Dylan's stern advisement. Something is happening, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones?
This is the same song on Highway 61 Revisited, where Dylan sang,
You've been with the professors, they've all liked your looks. With great lawyers, you have discussed lepers and crooks. You've been through all of F. Scott Fitzgerald's books. You're very well read, it is well known.
There's a wide variety of lyrics from across Dylan's oeuvre being used in all different legal contexts.
There's a matter of a just or unjust sentence, quoting Percy's song, and early Dylan too. It may be true he's got a sentence to serve, but 99 years you just don't deserve.
And a deep cut with an appearance from you're a big girl now from blood on the tracks. Change in the weather is known to be extreme. In a patent case, no less. So this judge might be a big deal fan.
And no surprise to any Dylan fan, a reference to hurricane. Yeah, we got the hurricane. Doesn't it make you feel ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game?
But among all the Dylan lyrics quoted, by all the judges from Supreme Court justices to courts across the United States, what is the lyric most often quoted?
What's the song most often quoted?
You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Subterranean Homesick Blues, 1965. Here, in one example, a case involving expert testimony regarding wind damage in Judge Road.
As put more poetically and famously by iconic singer, songwriter, poet Bob Dylan in the Subterranean Homesick Blues song on his 1965 Bringin' It All Home Back album, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Although Mr. Dylan correctly noted that an expert in meteorology might not be necessary to determine the near direction or existence of wind, expert testimony may well be needed, or may at least be helpful in determining whether wind deformed specific windows and doors, and if so, the amount of damage caused by such hurricane-related wind event.
And the list of cases quoting the lyric goes on and on and on.
So, yes, judges like Dylan. Oh, here's the list. Quoting Subterranean Homesick Blues. Research provided by Zach Kline. Graduate of high school law. Still love scripts.
That's all right, that's all right. So yes, judges like Bob Dylan, that's right.
But what does Bob Dylan really think about judges? Is he as reverent of the judiciary as the judiciary seems to be of him? What's the answer? Yeah, right. Here is Dylan on his piano bench, on his bench. Since 2001, Dylan has primarily played electric keyboard or piano in concert or on records.
Like on Shake Shake Mama, Together Through Life, released in 2009. Co-written with Robert Hunter, best known as principal lyricist of The Grateful Dead, we get a quick taste of how Dylan might feel about judges.
Down by the river, Judge Simpson walking around. Down by the river, Judge Simpson walking around. Nothing shocks me more than that old clown. We're not off to a great start.
Maybe we'll have better luck with Day the Locust, a song Dylan wrote in response to receiving an honorary doctorate at Princeton University in 1970.
I glanced into the chamber where judges were talking. Darkness was everywhere. It smelled like a tomb. I was ready to leave. I was already walking.
Not much better friends. In Most Likely You Go Your Way, and I'll Go Mine, a song off Blonde on Blonde, Dylan plays nightly on his current tour set list. In the bridge of the song, we have an unexpected judge.
The judge, he holds a grudge. He's going to call on you. He's badly built and walks on stilts. Watch out he don't fall on you.
Another song from the Blonde on Blonde sessions, She's Your Lover Now. They were in the felony room, but I ain't a judge. You don't have to be nice to me.
It's all right, Mom. I'm only bleeding. We see an even harsher take on judges. Old lady judges watch people in pairs, limited in sex they dare, to push fake morals, insult and stare, while money doesn't talk, it swears. Obscenity. Who really cares? Propaganda. All is phony.
This is the same 1965 song where Dylan sang. But even the President of the United States sometimes has to stand naked. Figures of power are not safe from Dylan's scrutiny of their aircraft.
On Joey, off Desire, the same album that gave us Hurricane, Dylan tells the aggrandized story of a Brooklyn gangster Joey.
Joey and the judge.
What time is it? Said the judge to Joey when they first met.
5 to 10, says Joey.
The judge says, that's exactly what you'll get.
From one judge with vicious wordplay to a judge who was corrupt and drunk, and Lily Rose Marie and the Jack of Hearts, a whimsical ballad off blood on the tracks.
The hanging judge came in unnoticed and was being wined and dined.
Later in the song, what happens to the hanging judge?
He went to get the hanging judge, but the hanging judge was drunk.
From the literal to the cerebral, Joker Man is a song from Dylan's so-called Christian era. The song, like all Dylan songs, is open to interpretation and might tell the story of Jesus, a Dylan version of Jesus at least.
And included in the song are
false-hearted judges dying in the webs that they spin. From the same period, we have
Angelina. I was only following instructions when the judge sent me down the road with your subpoena. Maybe Dylan was less interested in matters of personal service and more interested in rhyming subpoena with Angelina.
He also rhymes Argentina, hyena, and concertina with Angelina. From High Water for Charlie Patton of 2001's Love and Theft, we have a vengeful judge with an indistinct eye towards justice. They got Charles Darwin tracked down there on Highway 5. Judge says to the high sheriff, I want him dead or alive. Either one, I don't care. High water everywhere.
Well, there's not a judge thus far in Dylan's eyes who is either just or fair. Brownsville Girl. Who knows Brownsville Girl? Figure. If you don't know Brownsville Girl, take 11 minutes sometime in the next few days. 11 minutes.
And 4 seconds. To listen to the song co-written with great American playwright Sam Shepard, buried on a critically derided album not downloaded from 1985. The song follows an unnamed narrator as he travels across the American West on a journey of self-discovery set against the backdrop of an obsession with Gregory Peck's The Gunfighter, The Great American Road Trip, Setting Suns, Fleeting Loves, and one zany courtroom scene.
Well, you saw my picture in the Corpus Christi Tribune. Underneath it said, a man with no alibi. You went out on a limb to testify for me. You said I was with you. Then when I saw you break down in front of the judge and cry real tears, it was the best acting I saw anybody do.
In Brownsville Girl, we the judge could be swayed by histrionic acting. In Seven Curses, we the judge, much, much worse. For our last look at Dylan on Judges, there's no more damning portrait of a judge than Seven Curses.
Recorded during the sessions for the times they are changing, Seven Curses is the story of a purported crime, an unjust judge, and Dylan using his lyrics and his voice to set the record straight.
Seven Curses.
O'Reilly stole a stallion, but they caught him and they brought him back and they laid him down on the jailhouse ground with an iron chain around his neck. O'Reilly's daughter got a message that her father was going to hang. She rode by night and came by morning with gold and silver in her hand. When the judge saw Riley's daughter, his old eyes deepened in his head, saying, "Gold will never set free your father. The price, my dear, is you instead." "Oh, I'm as good as dead," cried Riley. "It's only you that he does crave, and my skin will surely crawl if he touches you at all. Get on your horse and ride away." "Oh, Father, you will surely die if I don't take the chance to try and pay the price and not take your advice. For that reason, I will have to stay." The gallows shadows shook the evening. In the night a hound dog bayed. In the night the grounds were groaning. In the night the price was paid. The next morning she had awoken to know that the judge had never spoken. She saw that hanging branch abandoned. She saw her father's body broken. These be 7 curses on a judge so cruel, that one doctor will not save him, that 2 healers will not heal him, that 3 eyes will not see him, that 4 ears will not hear him, that 5 walls will not hide him, that 6 diggers will not bury him, and that 7 deaths shall never kill him.
Seven verses.
So, are there any positive mentions of judges in the complete works of Bob Dylan?
We managed to find one. It's actually a short personal story.
For years, decades, whenever I was on trial, right before the judge would enter the courtroom, and you know, there's that moment when I would text back the following lyric. This goes back to Blackberries. The following lyric from Nettie Moore. "The judge is coming in. Everybody rise. Lift up your eyes."
Seems Dylan might just give me tiniest bit of respect, to your honor.
We're done with judges. How about lawyers? How do lawyers make out in the world of Bob Dylan, according to the research of Zach Kline? Well, they get lucky. In over 500 songs, Dylan has recorded and officially released. There are only 2, maybe 3, mentions of lawyers. Cry a While, off Love and Theft, released on September 11, 2001, is the song about a man hurt by life and love.
In the final verse of the song,
"You bet on a horse and it ran the wrong way. I always said you could be sorry, and today could be the day you might need a good lawyer. Could be your funeral, my trial."
well, I cried for you. Now it's your turn. You can cry a while. Also off Love and Death, we have Moonlight. a murder ballad. Doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, it takes a thief to catch a thief. Whom does the bell toll for love? It tolls for you and me. It seems Dylan mostly leaves lawyers for his own personal affairs. Now we're going to take a look at the way Dylan contemplates the ideas of law and justice, from his early release in The Times They Are Changing in 1964 to his most recent album, Rough and Rowdy Ways.
There are 3 songs on The Times They Are Changing that set the tempo for an idea essential to Dylan and the law, that the law is not, as Dylan himself would write, all equal, and that the courts are on the level.
We do want to give context that Dylan was one of a myriad of writers of all identities who used art as a means of protest during this time, and that the conversation around authorship and lived experience is a complicated one, but that these songs continue to pulsate today with their vigor and intentions.
First, in Only a Pawn in Their Game, a song that assesses blame for the assassination of civil rights leader Medgar Evers. When it comes to the, quote, poor white man, Dylan sang, he's taught in the school from the start by the rule that the laws are with him to protect his white skin.
Next, with On God on our side, I was taught and brought up there the laws to abide, and that the land that I live in has God on its side. Lastly, The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll.
The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll probes at the real-life story of Hattie Carroll, a black American mother who worked as a barmaid in segregated Baltimore, who was murdered by William Zansinger, a white farmer, by the blow of his cane for not serving him quickly enough. Zansinger, renamed Zanzinger by Dylan, would be sentenced to a mere 6 months in prison for the murder.
Dylan read about the accountant newspaper and wrote a plaintive and fiery ballad with the following lyrics at the very end of the song.
In the courtroom of honor where the judge pounded his gavel to show that all's equal and the courts are on the level, and the strings and the books ain't pulled and persuaded, and even the nobles get properly handled. Once the cops have chased after and caught, and that the ladder of law has no top and no bottom, stared at the person who killed for no reason, who just happened to be feeling that way without warning. And he spoke through his cloak so deep and distinguished, and handed out strongly for penalty and repentance William Zanzinger with a 6-month sentence. Oh, but you who philosophize disgrace and criticize all fears, bury the rag deep in your face, for now is the time for your tears.
As a recording artist, Dylan would move away from these early narrative songs. But as a live artist, Dylan would go on to play The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll 296 times, from October 1963 to October 2012. So before Dylan took the song out of his set lists, those damning words would ring out from Athens, Greece to Washington, D.C.
And Zach checked. No, never involved.
After the times they were changing, Dylan released one more acoustic album, Another Side of Bob Dylan. And then the evolution would come sonically and with Dylan's interpretation of the law, bringing it all back home. Released in 1965, 4 months before Dylan went electric at the Newport Folk Festival, we start to see Dylan's obsession with the outlaw as hero, and how the law itself is something better off avoiding. from She Belongs to Me.
She never stumbles, she's got no place to fall. She never stumbles, she's got no place to fall. She's nobody's child. The law can't touch her at all.
And on the very same record, there are no trials inside the gates of Eden. And then, on Maggie's farm, we've married her two ideas: the law as an oppressive force, and the outlaw looking to escape.
Well, she talks to all the servants about man and God and law. Everybody says she's the brains behind law. She's 68 but says she's 24. I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
Man and God and law and Bob Dylan once out. When we get to Blonde on Blonde in 1966, with Absolute Zoo Parade,
But to live outside the law, you must be honest.
The Honest Outlaw. Well, in 1973, Dylan got to live out a childhood fantasy of stepping into a Western when he played a small role in director Sam Peckinpah's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Peckinpah, most noted for The Wild Bunch.
In the film, the turncoat Pat Garrett, played by James Coburn, chases down Billy the Kid, played by fellow songwriter Chris Christopherson. Dylan also provided the songs for the soundtrack, solidifying his idea of what it means to be inside and outside the law. There's guns across the river aiming at ya, lawmen on the trail who'd like to catch ya, bounty hunters too, they like to get ya. Billy, they don't want you to be so free.
Freedom and its opposition, the law.
Also on the soundtrack was an unexpected hit, Knocking on Heaven's Door. Gentlemen, you know it? With its lyrics, Mama, take this badge off of me, I can't use it anymore, it's getting dark, too dark to see, I feel like. Oh, you know the rest? Maybe not. And it continues our theme here of the triumph and demise of the outlaw and the fate of the law of the land. But also on the soundtrack, we get a court-approved, I've been told, sidebar.
And here's the sidebar. In the recording session for the album, Dylan laid down a sketch of a chorus of a song called Rock Me Mama.
You can find it on YouTube.
The song would not make the official studio recording, but would be released on an official bootleg from Columbia Records.
Hardcore fans seek out bootlegs, and one of those fans was a teenager at the time, here seen as an adult, named Chris Critter Foodblock. Critter, here we can check. Critter would bring the album back to his boarding school classmate, Kip Secor, see here with the violin, who would add a verse to Dylan's chorus and write a song called Wagon Wheel. Catch. And Critter would go on to form a band to for a medicine show and record Wagon Wheel on their second album.
Recognizing the song would become a staple of the Americana scene, that's us by the way, and then a massive pop country hit for Darius Rucker, and is likely being belted out in karaoke bars across Philadelphia and America as we speak.
Like so many Dylan songs, his roots in earlier American folk songs, a topic of a completely different lecture, but for legal purposes, Dylan and Secor share an equal 50-50 songwriting credit.
Our guess is that they both had good lawyers.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Sidebar.
Back to the law. In In 1975, Dylan takes a surprise turn and records the song Hurricane.
Co-written with theater director and songwriter Jean-Philippe, the song narrates the gross injustice and false conviction of boxer Lieutenant Hurricane Carter. The song details the players in Patterson, New Jersey bar that led to Carter's false arrest and the DA's unlawful prosecution. All while contending Carter, a middleweight boxer who was in real life ranked 9th, could have been, as Dylan sang in the chorus, champion of the world.
Let's just listen. Dylan met Carter in prison, and the song was played on the Rolling Thunder Review, including 2 benefit concerts, one at Madison Square Garden and the other at the Houston Astrodome. The song gave Carter's wrongful incarceration a public face. But Hurricane is tricky. The second benefit concert didn't raise funds for Carter's defense after the costs of the concert were paid. And when Carter was tried and convicted a second time, the public fanfare and Bob Dylan's interest in the matter went away.
Dylan and Columbia Records were later sued for defamation by Patty Valentine, a real-life eyewitness to the murder mentioned in the song, but the case was thrown out.
And as history would have it, a U.S. District Court judge who finally granted Carter a writ of habeas corpus in 1985 declined to listen to the song when it was offered to him. And Dylan, to this day, has not written a song based so closely on true events. Nonetheless, Bob Dylan's excoriation of the DA, the jury, the American justice system, all that left an innocent man in a living hell.
In a land where, as Dylan sang, justice is a game.
Stands as testimony and testament to his voice in opposition to a man who had been so wrongly, so deeply wronged by a system that, as Dylan saw it, is here to protect us.
After Dylan, there's another shift for Dylan in the law. From 1979 to 1983, Dylan released 4 albums: Slow Train Comin', Saved, Shot of Love, Infidels, which formed his so-called Christian period. Now, was Bob Dylan deeply invested in a religion, seemingly opposite from his Jewish upbringing? Was this a deep exploration of themes of biblical judgment and sacrifice explored decades before in Highway 61 and All Along the Watchtower, and the mystics and prophets on John Wesley Harding? Or was this just another character Dylan wanted to play?
Like all things Dylan, the answer is all of the above. On these albums, the, quote, real law is from Dylan's version of a higher power.
From Slow Train. Man's ego is inflated, his laws are outdated, they don't apply no more.
On When You're Gonna Wake Up, adulterers in the churches and pornography in schools. You got gangsters in power, lawbreakers making the rules.
These are just 2 of many references to law and justice on these albums. Then, there's Gonna Change My Way of Thinking and Gotta Serve Somebody, both originally recorded during this period and subsequently performed live with new lyrics.
When Dylan played the People's Republic of China in 2011, He was criticized in the media for not playing his protest songs in the 1960s, like Blowin' in the Wind. But for one of the shows, he opened the concert with Gonna Change My Way of Thinking, with the following revised lyrics.
I'm sitting at the welcome table. I'm so hungry I need to eat a horse. I'm gonna revitalize my thinking. I'm gonna let the law take its course.
The law is going to take its course. And Dylan played one of his Christian songs in communist China. Perhaps an act of self-subversion.
Dylan even went on to issue a rare statement that his set lists were not censored by the Chinese government.
And a surprise additional reference to a lawyer. Dylan plays Gotta Serve Somebody live in concert, and in 2022, he often sang, maybe you're on the borderline, holding down the fort. Might be a lawyer headed for a day in court, but you've got to serve somebody. Might be the devil, might be the Lord, but you've got to serve somebody.
There's the law, and then there's the law for Dylan. Starting in 1997 with Time Out of Mind, Love and Theft, Modern Times, Together Through Life, Tempest, and most recently, Rough and Rowdy Ways, Dylan released a series of albums where his songs became darker, often focused on danger, criminality, and the apocalypse.
On Early Roman Kings, off the album Tempest, released in 2012, Ding Dong Daddy, you're coming up short. Gonna put you on trial in a Sicilian court.
In the song, which likely has more to do with the gangs of 1960s New York and less to do with the early kings of ancient Rome, a court is a place where there is no justice and no relief.
And even on his most recent studio album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, the world is a cruel place where history is a history of violence, where justice is punishing, far from restorative. From my own version of you,
Stand over there by the cypress tree, where the Trojan women and children were sold into slavery. Long before the First Crusade, way back before England or America were made.
step right into the burning hell, where some of the best-known enemies of mankind dwell. Mr. Freud with his dreams and Mr. Marx with his axe see the rawhide lash rip the skin off their backs.
It's a harsh worldview, and not so many miles, and from the same mind to 1966, Visions of Johanna on Blonde sang.
Inside the museum, infinity goes on trial. Voices echo, this is what salvation must be like after a while.
Bob Dylan on the law, up on trial. Well, there comes a time in every Dylan show, right before the final song, where Bob Dylan says the fewest of words to the audience.
Thank you, friends. I'd like to introduce my band.
So, with that spirit, we'd like to introduce our band and thank the special folks who made tonight's performance possible. Our director, Kyle Metzger. Stage manager, Al Safe, for running the PowerPoint.
The one and only Dean Mary McGovern. Who runs the tab, came out of the sick bed today, and everyone here at the Drexel University Kline School of Law. And our friends at the Temple American Inn of Courts at the Beasley School of Law, thank you. I went to the real Beasley School of Law.
A special thank you to Yvette Cooper, who's out here somewhere, for our help in putting this event together. Special thanks to our friends at, get this right, at the Drexel University Thomas Archive School of Law, Scott Berger, I see Scott back there. To you all coming tonight, as Bob Dylan says in Mississippi, we've got nothing but affection for all those who've sailed with us. You can look up the lyrics. And of course, a big round of applause.
Big round.
Jake Miller.
We got to know these guys, and they are absolutely amazing musicians. Just what we've shared with you tonight are thoughts, opinions, hearsay.
Conjecture about Bob Dylan.
What brings the two of us back to Bob Dylan, album after album, concert after concert, decade after decade, it's now decades, is his genius and his inscrutability.
To be a Dylan fan is to embrace the unknown.
What is Bob Dylan going to do next?
Will he release another Christmas album like he did in 2009?
Which is really great.
Or another collection of American standards like he did in 2015 and 17. We were kind of over those. So, hopefully not.
Not recommended list. Or essays on the American popular song like he did just this year. Tonight we've explored the ways his thoughts on judges and the law come with a bit of sincerity.
A lot of cruelty.
And with Bob Dylan, a lot of complexity.
Is the songwriter who recently sold his entire catalog to a corporate entity the greatest advocate for outlaws? Is the law he holds in the highest order not the law on the bench, but his idea of a mystical law above?
Will judges keep quoting Bob Dylan in their opinions now that they know his real view of them? Exposed here tonight. With all things Bob Dylan, there's no right answer. But the answer, my friend,
We want to leave you with one last judge quoting Bob Dylan.
in this New York City matter, where a litigant asked to be reimbursed by the court $45 in fees, the judge let the litigant know